Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Table. This is episode 51, and I have a candidate for the New Blue Party for St. Catharines, Ontario. And they're doing very well. They have like 97 candidates already covered in different regions. So that's awesome. We're going to talk to our guest is Rob Atalick in the district of St. Catharines, as I said. And we'll talk to him and find out more about the party. And it's sad that there's 26 different choices, and they need 124 seats each to get on the ballot. So it's a big long trek. And then we've got the battle against the Dominion voting machines, which I personally don't trust. Maybe they're trustworthy. I don't know if it was proven in court in the States that they can be hacked. So that puts doubt in my head. But we're going to talk to Rob right after this. Welcome, everyone, to the Truth Table. Today, we're focused on the parties in the Ontario election coming up on the February 27th. And the New Blue is our topic tonight, is one of the parties, the leader, Jim Karahalios, and the co-founder, Belinda Karahalios, who was also a member of parliament in the Conservative Party, but was ejected by Doug Ford. Uh, well, I'm not sure if Doug was in there at that point, but just for trying to stick to conservative values. This is almost the same story as Maxime Bernier with the federal government. And it's almost the same situation where he saw that they had lost their ways as a conservative party, and he felt like he had no choice really but to um, go on his own and try to save this country. My guest tonight is Rob Atalick, who is the candidate for St. Catharines, Ontario. So if anyone has friends in St. Catharines, I hope you will let them know who their candidate is. And we're here to talk to him. Thank you for coming, Rob.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
So you're the owner of Niagara Kung Fu Academy.
Yeah, that's my kind of my business at night. So I've been teaching kung fu to families for the past 20 years. It's, Chinese martial art, but the way we do it is a little bit different than what people typically expect. A lot of what we do is character development and teaching life skills, and we integrate that into martial arts to make it what we call holistic kung fu, right? We want to make sure that the student is learning to empower themselves, not just physically and mentally through learning the martial art, but also they're learning a lot of core values that will help them. They're learning about accountability, they're learning about leadership, they're learning about confidence and courage and perseverance. These are all life skills that are universal, and we've found that there's a real appetite for it once parents saw it, because a lot of this stuff is they find it's getting missed in public school. So a lot of times we've worked well in the public school. They welcomed us in to do guest speaking and guest classes and things like that, because they recognize the value of it. But it's just something that is not as prevalent, I guess, as parents would like it to be. So that's kind of been my evening project for the past 20 years.
I took Wing Chun long ago, and it seems very similar to your approach, where it's a really self-discipline and even respecting your opponent. Like it was very deep. I was about 18 years old when I took it, and my teacher was 18 years old. But it was fascinating. It was Bruce Lee style, basically, of kung
Yep.
fu, and I really loved it. I thought it was amazing. So far, the party has 97 of 124 seats. That's very encouraging. I know we're running out of time, but still, that's a great number. That's a lot. And the more districts, the better. And getting seats is very important, because really the Ontarians need to understand that the Conservative Party is not a Conservative Party anymore. It has left its classical meaning. And if there's anything you want to talk about as your platform, education, perhaps the reducing the administration costs.
Well, education's important to me because I'm looking at, from my point of view. So the other approach I'm coming at from martial arts, that gives me a kind of a background in understanding how to develop mental health of the individual, right? So a big part of what we've been doing for the past 20 years is individual empowerment, right? Which, what I've noticed over the past kind of 3 or 4 years, kind of goes counter to a standard government kind of top-down model, right? It's incongruent, which has made our lives a little bit more difficult than I would like. That's okay, right? As my teacher always used to say, do you want something easier to do? And I would say, no seafood. but having this approach, I think, gives me kind of a unique perspective on the mental health crisis. And the other aspect that I really like to focus on in my campaign is the housing crisis. I've been working as in real estate development for the past 3 years. We've been building through our family, we've been building an apartment building downtown St. Catharines. In a time, we were building this through COVID, and we had a lot of challenges through it. And that whole time we understood the need for housing. We're pushing for it. We know that everyone needs it, and it was so that was something that I was passionate about during the day. And I think that's a unique experience that I can bring to the table in this provincial election as well. That a lot of the legacy candidates, I mean, they're great people. They've been in our community for a long time. I respect them, but I don't think they have the same understanding to kind of get a lot of these things done in housing, and to connect the federal and then provincial government, and kind of get them working together, especially with the change in government that we're going to have coming up federally.
Now, in the education, what's the New Blue stand on the DEI and the gender pronouns? Are they the same as Max?
I can't say they're exactly the same. And I'm not completely sure. I haven't read into Max's platform completely, but ideally what we want is, we want strong individual rights. We want to respect the right of the individual, right? That's first and foremost. We want to make sure that everyone's respected equally. And I have hands-on experience with this too, because I've taught kids that are, from all different backgrounds. I've even taught some kids that, would identify themselves as trans, or some that are gay. And the beautiful thing about stepping on the floor in Kung Fu is, it doesn't matter. Like, first and foremost, you're developing yourself physically and mentally, right? And they quickly learn to to stand as a person, to believe in themselves, to be confident in themselves, because of their activity and their effort and what they're putting in, right? That's first and foremost.
But I think the trans agenda is why we have this situation. Because when I was a child, there was no boys in dresses. I mean, even biblically, it says a man should not wear a woman's clothing. So I'm hoping that you will revert back and just remove it from being encouraged, because there is a lot of emotional pain that comes along with being different. There may be privileges, which is how are they keeping it growing? Boys can go in the girls' bathroom. They can, and there are boys that wouldn't mind doing that. You know what I mean? They're willing to put on a dress. So, as disciplined as you and I may be, that discipline is not there for children, and they're just not mature enough to understand the long-term effects of the encouraging of this. I think children don't need to be guided that way. They learn naturally from each other, and this agenda has really doubled and tripled the amount of students uh, claiming to be trans. So
Yeah,
would you encourage removing the flags from government, the pride flags from government buildings? Because the provincial government has the power over education. You're the only ones that can do something about it.
yeah, I think if someone is, like I said, if someone's rights are being violated, I'm going to be the first one there to make sure that they're not. And in our little kind of what should I call it? Little bubble it is a school, we have that same thing. There's mutual respect, and it's not because we're it's just we're just teaching these common values of mutual respect. That's first and foremost. I don't think this stuff needs to be in the school system, or at the very least I put it in my platform. The parents should have notice of that and have the ability to opt out if they don't want their kids educated in it. It should be their right.
Yeah, well, I agree with that 100%. I generally agree with you. I would like to have it all removed, but it would have to be gradual if it were to be removed, because it's really not necessary. A flag doesn't have a place in a school, unless it's a Canadian flag. That's the only flag we need. And the Ontario flag, perhaps, but you're also against the MAID program, correct?
Yes, heavily against the MAID program. Yeah, and I know some people that support it, and I've heard their positions. I get it, but it is because I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
From
Absolutely.
what I've seen, and I think time will tell with that. With more of it coming out, with what was done with medications during the pandemic. I think that will come out. It might take a few years, but I think there's there's been doctors. I don't know if you follow John Campbell on Dr. John Campbell. He's in the UK. He's spoken out about this. The overusage of was it what's the palliative drug that they were using, but just completely overprescribed. Anyway, it'll come out in the future. I don't need to go into that too much. But sorry, bottom line is, yeah, I don't support the MAID program.
Yeah, that's like breaking a commandment, really, even if it's just killing yourself.
Well, it seems to be. Sorry.
They're saving money, but the drugs they're using, the first drug is a paralytic, so it paralyzes them. Mm-hmm. And the second one basically fills their lungs with fluid, so they're really drowning the patient. That's what's actually happening. It's saving money, and they're not jumping and screaming, and because they're drowning, they can't move because they're paralyzed. So it's a very demented kind of way to call it a peaceful way to go. It's not peaceful, in my opinion. Now, let's go to another topic: municipal affairs and housing. You want to eliminate the expropriation of farmland.
Yeah, that's in their platform. My views on housing are a little more. In St. Catharines is a pretty built up city. It's landlocked, so
Yep.
we have issues that are a little more. They're a little different than that. So a lot of the issues I see in housing, the municipal level is okay. Like when it comes to development, I know a lot of people like to shout about red tape. Our city in St. Catharines has been pretty good working with us. They understand the need for housing. And with a big project like this, it was that we were building. It's not something they see every day, so we had to work with each other. We did. My issue is with the Ontario government. I see there's going to be a disconnect coming in between the Ontario government and the Conservatives that are going to be coming in during the next federal election, right? Because as we say in the party platform, like Doug Ford is not blue and he's not for you, right? He's not really acting like a conservative. So basically, it's just going to be like having, a federal government that's conservative, provincial government that is that's liberal. Basically, he's what I call, they're liberal light, more or less, right? And I think that there's major concerns that need to be addressed with the landlord and tenant tribunal if we're going to be fixing. When Pierre Poilievre gets in, I think he's going to open up the floodgate, and we are going to build the housing that we need. Structurally, if we don't have the systems in place to help with mobility, housing mobility, we're going to have a lot of stagnation, which we have right now at a regional level, right? So our regional level, we have some affordable housing, and I know everyone wants affordable housing, and a lot of NDP party members are kind of always at this, like, give us the affordable housing, just give it to us now. It's really not that simple, right? Like, we all know that we need housing, and all housing is good housing, potentially. It doesn't matter if it's affordable housing, if it's mid-market, if it's high market, it all needs to be on the market, because the reality is people move, right? They move up, they move down. There's income mobility, which is the great thing about living in mostly free market free market society that we're supposed to be living in. But the regional housing, there's a lot of housing there, and people are on a giant waiting list to get in it. The problem is that when people are in geared to income housing, so they would, and I know this because I lived in geared to income housing in St. Catharines. When I first met my wife, we lived in geared to income housing, and then eventually, our pay started to increase as we started to work new jobs and we combined our income. We eventually hit a market cap at that provincial housing, right? And then we moved out because we found something a little bit nicer. So that type of income mobility is, what should be happening, right? The issue is that these people, there's a lot of people in regional housing that are at their market cap, which is not the purpose that this is intended for, and they're not moving out. And the reason they're not moving up and out is because this middle market isn't here. So, like, yes, we do need affordable housing, but it's not as simple as just dropping all of the modular housing on a site somewhere that the regular kind of people want. It's not that simple, right? We do need it, but we also need mid-market, and that's where the next challenge comes in. If we don't have the right mobility moving up from, say, regional housing to mid-market, and then mid-market to higher market, you're going to have more stagnation. Okay, and
You're
this
right.
is well, this is where I actually had a lot of clash with my colleagues in the Blue Party, the New Blue Party, and they gotta hear me out for a minute, okay? Because it sounds like not a conservative principle, but it's a thing that we have to work with in government, okay? Doug Ford scrapped the rent control in 2018, okay? And the problem with is like the landlord and tenant tribunal has been a mess for a long time, right? The pandemic just completely exacerbated this and made it so much worse. So now, if you're like a landlord, okay, so you've, and I know everyone likes to point and be like, well, the landlords are greedy, right? Well, a lot of these landlords are people that they've saved up a lot of money. They own a little duplex so they can, finally start to save up for retirement, right? And they don't really have rights to protect their property. So if they have a professional tenant, move in and just work the system and give them hell, they're going to be out of pocket tens of thousands of dollars. And you've probably heard stories about this. A lot of people have, right? So that's an issue. So the landlord and tenant tribunal has been so backed up that people have been, they don't have any help getting these nightmare tenants out of their buildings. Now, I'm not talking about like a lot of tenants. Most tenants are fantastic. They're great people, but there's this small little percentage of people that just, they really can work the system and rip these people off. And they don't have the ability to protect their property against these people. right? And this was exacerbated during the pandemic, like I said. So this needs to be reworked. Part of it is we need to give landlords the ability to, to speed up this judicial process where they're not waiting 6 to 9 months to get justice for their property being damaged. Okay. At the other end
Yeah.
of that, and this is where I'm thinking, like, if someone understands how this works, they can get into Parliament and say, okay, look, if you guys, like, if the NDP wants to bring back rent control, it has to be reasonable. It can't be like it was before. It's got to be closer to matching inflation, but it's got to be that give and take where, okay, fine, we'll put that in, but also you've got to have people have the ability to protect the property where they're not getting worked over. Otherwise, it's not worth it for them to put inventory on the market. There's a lot of inventory in St. Catharines where, people have vacant buildings, vacant apartment buildings in their basement or in their backyard, that they're just sitting there vacant because they don't want to risk dealing with the nightmare that's the landlord and tenant tribunal. Okay. So anyway, this is kind of coming back around to a point. All right. If we have all of these new buildings come on the market, okay, none of them are going to be subject to rent control, which is a problem, because now if you're in existing housing, right, like if you're in this regional housing, you're in mid-market housing, and these new buildings come on and they're new and there's no rent control on them, why would you move into these buildings here if you can afford a couple extra $100 a month, and you could move into something nicer? Would you do that if there's no rent control protection on this? Okay. So this is what I mean. It's got to be kind of a give and take an issue. Now, just to be clear, rent control is not a new blue issue. Okay. Very, very clear on that. I'm talking about how to work in a system that benefits everyone, because if you don't, you're going to have massive housing stagnation. And this also goes into my issue with Doug Ford. Okay. And is it the first or second policy of the new blue policy is they want to ban lobbyists out of Parliament, which I completely agree with, because for my mind, the only reason I can see Doug Ford pulling the rent control out of the landlord and tenant without fixing all the other issues is to serve big GTA developers that are lobbying government. It doesn't really serve a purpose for us down here. And it looks to me like a lobbyist move, right? It doesn't actually serve anyone. And this is a big problem. The lobbying is a big problem. It needs to be dealt with. And I know that, for a lot of people, it's going to make me people in politics is going to make me unpopular. And I'm sure it makes the new blue party unpopular. But like Pierre Poilievre has talked about it at the federal level, right? But I don't know if he's talked about banning lobbyists, but he definitely doesn't give them any favor, which is what even more attracted me to his platform. But it's on the same vein, right? So I do really support that. We do need to to get lobbyists out of Parliament, make sure that voices of people are being heard and not weighted down because the lobbyists have such a big influence.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But you're right about St. Catharines. Like, all the land is pretty much taken. So the only thing the city could do was build more, skyscrapers. How is the new Blues position on immigration and open borders?
Well, we definitely need it needs to be controlled. Like it's been kind of rampant and crazy, right? Like that. Yeah. Let me skip over to that part in their platform.
Yeah, Toronto is terrible.
Yeah. It just needs to be regulated. That's all.
The list on the right here. This is on the New Blue website, and on the right here is all the areas that don't have a candidate yet. And if you'd like to run, I'd encourage you to go to the newblueontario.com website. You see Don Valley North. That's where. Oh, I think that's where I ran. Huh. I ran quite a while ago, but I don't think I'll run again. But there's 27 available spots for candidates. If you want to pause, and I'll give you the list again there. There we go. So would you pull American products from the liquor stores like Doug Ford would? I have to ask it because it's such a joke. Like, These are our friends.
I have a lot of American friends through martial arts, and we get together. I maybe only see them once a year, maybe twice a year if I'm lucky. And, you develop a brotherhood with these people. So, to have this animosity for something that could have been prevented with a 10-minute phone call 2 months ago. Like, I understand. No, I don't understand.
Yeah,
when,
because
when
instead, all he had to do was stop the immigration, the flow of drugs, take over our borders. That's all. That's being
so
asked.
this was my point that I was talking to a few people when they kept saying, well, we have to do something. Well, we have to do something. And I said, well, okay, this is what we should have done. And then I answered it, and they're like, well, it's too late now. I'm like, well, it shouldn't have been too late. It needed to be. Here's the thing, because the argument I was hearing, well, you know, Trump's not going to hold to his word. He's going to lie. He's going to say that, and then we're going to do all this stuff. And then what if he pulls the rug and he says no? And I said, okay, so let me get this straight. You go through the process of fixing your border, and you eliminate a lot of the drug trafficking that goes through it. Probably in the process, you eliminate a lot of the guns that come over the border as well. Okay, so you'll have a fixed border, and then if it goes wrong, Trump will be exposed for the dictator that you all say he is. So that seems like a win-win to me. So why don't we do that, right? And now instead what we've done is we've worked ourselves into a lose-lose situation. We're kind of losing anyway. But I mean, it kind of got patched up with this phone call that, that Justin Trudeau had, which could have been done 2 months ago. I mean, if he drove down to he flew down to Mar-a-Lago, okay, for a dinner. I don't know about you, but I mean, when I'm having dinner, especially in a big, Mar-a-Lago bar, we don't get that much accomplished. It should have been, I would have followed up with a phone call and a phone call and a phone call until the deal got put together. But that's how business works. I don't know if that's how they work in federal government, right? But if I came back and I like, for example, in our family business, I would have been asked, did you get this deal done? If I'd have said, well, I went down there and visited for dinner. Okay, and then what? Well, that was it. Like, I would have got my head kicked in. That's not fine. Like, that's not a reasonable excuse for a business. Never mind when when your country is on the line. Yeah, but this the whole election here, we're sitting here is because Doug Ford seemed to have a temper tantrum about this stuff, and it could have got fixed just through conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Reasonable minds and wise men can can find a way out. And it just seems to me like, to be a politician, you have to have a certain amount of intelligence. But pulling the liquor from the shelves is like childish and bullyish, and I'm bigger than you, and you know what I mean. It's just absolutely the wrong thing, because tariffs on us from America only makes things expensive for Americans to buy Canadian. Like, our goods are more expensive. So, but if our government puts tariffs on the United States, American goods are more expensive for us. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't work the way most people think it's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation graduated to tariff war, trade war, so quickly without much pushback, and this is the product of this this feedback loop we have in between the government-funded media and then the federal government, right? I mean, you can see it if you watch Parliament. You see where they stand up in Parliament. They say, according to the CBC, right? Okay, well, according to the CBC, so you're forming policy based on the opinions of the media that you're paying for. It's a little bit circular, right? So, and everyone was jumped on this, tariff war, and they just kept on pushing it. And I'm kind of like sitting there. I'm like, what about, like, we teach our kids, well, can you talk this stuff out first, right? And now the answer to that would be like, well, no, you can't talk to Trump, okay? And it's that constant, like, othering of people and labeling people that gets this kind of, we end up in this kind of problem. Like, you've already decided ahead of time that you can't talk to someone. If that's what you've decided in your head before you try talking to them, then you've already lost, right?
Yeah.
And that's not, that issue is not exclusive to, you know, to one ideology. We both do it. And one thing that I'm trying to do is, have real conversations with people without slapping the label on them, because as soon as you slap on that label, now it affects your thinking and your accountability, right? So, for example, in teaching, I teach all my, my instructors and my staff this, right? We read a book, a mandatory reading at our school. It's called Psychology of Winning. It's an old book, but it's a really good book for, for positive thinking and things like that. But Dennis Waitley, in it, he talks about the story of two college professors. They had two different classes. One class was a bunch of C students and one was a bunch of A students, right? And then they all knew what they were getting. Well, there was some kind of computer glitch where the classes switched. So, the instructor, the teacher, professor that thought he had the A students had the C students, and the one that had C students thought he had the A students. They switched over. And then by the end of the semester, the grades actually started to invert based on the expectations of the professor, right? Because they're thinking, well, if they're not getting it, if the C students aren't getting it, he's thinking, well, these are A students. Why aren't they getting it? It's something that I'm doing wrong. So then he would work to explain it a little bit better, right? Whereas the other students, when you had the A students, they actually dropped because the guy was like, well, these guys aren't going to get it, so why would I even bother? So, when you imprint that label on yourself, you really affect, you really bias yourself on the conversations that you could otherwise have, right? So, we really got to make an effort to hold back and try to think objectively before just throwing that label out. Nothing else, for the fact that it just limits our our critical thinking and how we can have these conversations. This is exactly what happened there. It was like, well, you can't talk to him. It was automatically labeled and the conversation didn't happen, and then it had come down to the threatening the tariffs. It should have been prevented 2 months before that.
Absolutely. So what was the one thing that compelled you to get into politics?
We've had a, yeah, it was I've had an interest in it before. It was COVID. That was really got me. And this is not like a well thought out decision. I've only, I decided to do this only a few weeks ago. I never saw myself in politics at all. But when this election was called, I'm looking at who am I going to vote for, and I'm asking myself, after what Doug Ford's done over the past so many years, can I look myself in the eye and vote for him and then sleep well at night? And then the answer is no, I can't. I can't, So people often say a lot of things out, well, you're going to split the vote or whatever like that, which is, I think that's a little bit of it's just an old talking point. But if people can look at themselves in the mirror and vote for Doug Ford and be happy about it, then all power to you. But I couldn't, so I had to look for someone else to vote for, and I looked for the New Blue Party, and no one was running in my area, so let's do it.
Excellent. Oh, I had a question. I just lost it. Being extremely positive, if New Blue becomes a majority government in Ontario, which would be awesome, by the way, would you get rid of the Dominion voting machines? Will you go to paper ballots?
I haven't seen a compelling argument that these things are a net positive. So
No, I've seen in court in the United States, there was a court case and it was proven that they can be hacked. So
it's a machine.
But even our polls are skewed. I've seen multiple polls where the opposites and where they just exclude parties. And, that's not fair to the population. Like if there's 26 parties in Ontario, which is ridiculous, then they should all be on a poll. Like them or not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many of them. I've got them listed right over here. But it's just crazy.
I don't understand why it's a contentious issue. I mean, it's a machine. Like by nature of being a machine, it can be hacked. It's not. It's like it's not a matter of if. It's a
Yes.
matter of when. I don't understand, and maybe I'm missing a part of the ideology that makes me skip over this. But I don't
But
understand
you
why.
know, the main parties, the Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, like it because they can fix them. You know what I mean? They're the globalists. That's why they don't fight against it. I'm just hoping that the new blue will commit to getting rid of them, because I think it's so important that we have paper ballots that we can recount. You know,
Yeah,
so we have the Canada's Choice Party, Communist Party, Consensus Party, Electoral Reform Party. See, all these are great ideas. Electoral reform is basically getting rid of the Dominion and going to paper ballots. So all these parties, it's almost like the Liberals and the NDP and the Conservatives are just inventing parties just to make it overwhelming.
just to water. I guess.
You know what I mean?
I never thought about that. Yeah, it's
It would,
interesting.
because they could do it. They just have to register, and then they can be on there, whether they have a candidate or not. They go on the list, and then they complicate the situation for people. And it really, oh, you can't really see that.
No,
I'd have
I'm looking over it. But some of these, like I know the Communist Party. I know the guy. I think it was the leader of the Communist Party. He emailed me when I first started running, which
no,
was
really.
funny. Yeah, and he was asking me about my stance on. He's like, well, I saw that you guys, New Blue Party. I was talking about, the rental reform, and he's like, well, I kind of agree with that, but you guys are the anti-mandate party, aren't you? And what's your stance on that? And I explained it this way, which I'm always confused on why my friends that are a lot more left leaning don't have a problem with the crony capitalism. Like I'm a free market capitalist, so I despise crony capitalism, and I don't like corporate welfare. Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm always surprised at why my friends that are more left leaning don't like this. Doesn't trigger them. Okay, so I don't know, this is going to be a contentious issue maybe, but I'll get into it anyway because this is the
That's
answer
okay.
that
That's okay.
this this is the answer I gave to my communist friend that emailed me asking me about, do you support the mandates? Like, well, during when we had a vaccine mandate and I had to have a vaccine to get into a restaurant, okay, there wasn't, and I was following this stuff pretty closely. There wasn't enough evidence that these things had a clear enough and effective enough impact on transmissibility to proportionate to the heavy-handed approach of mandating them, you have to get one. Okay. The only reason that I could tell, and maybe this is the business, the entrepreneur in me, the business mind in me, the only reason I can tell, from a common sense standpoint, why you would do that is if your lobbyists push you to. Okay. And at that time, we were getting a Moderna vaccine manufacturer in Cambridge, Ontario. Okay. So I have a very hard time believing that, that project and the lobbyists that were moving it along in Parliament didn't have any impact on that. Okay. I'm just, like I'm saying, I have a hard time believing that it didn't have an effect on that decision. So this is where I don't understand why people don't ask these questions, especially the ones, like I said, like my communist friend that you'd think would be the first to call out crony capitalism. Why aren't you looking at that? Because it just, it seems to be very convenient to me anyway.
Yeah.
That's gonna that's gonna
No, it's
fire up
okay.
some comments on my Facebook wall.
Well, the best thing is to talk your own truth, because even if it's slightly veers from the party. I mean, this is Belinda's story.
Mhm.
She
Yeah,
held
that's
on to.
exactly it. She held on to what she believed in, and then she was kicked out, and this is what tells me that the PC party is not a conservative party. Because when I go out to these meetings and I meet people that are affiliated with either an Ontario party or the New Blue Party, like there is, there's some agreement, but there's a lot of disagreement. And I meet some people that are great, that I'm like, we could talk for hours. And I meet some people that are just like way out there, and I'm like, I don't agree with you, but you're awesome, and I appreciate your passion. I love you, but you're a little bit, you've gone too far down the rabbit hole. But that's completely okay. Like, welcome aboard. We all believe in, primarily individual freedom, right? Like that's our the core belief that brings us together is the freedom of the individual first. That value is there first. Okay, so it's that
See, and
that value that brings us together is more important than all the other stuff that
yes,
separates us. Okay.
yes, because it also shows honesty.
Yeah.
You're speaking
Exactly.
from the heart, even if it goes against the grain of your own party. You're telling your constituents who you are as a human being, as a person. And we don't get that with Doug Ford. It's like, hello, friends.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't call us friends. I say brothers and sisters because that's factual. That's what I believe I say everyone. But he says friends, and that's not inappropriate. Taking the American liquor from the shelves is inappropriate. Yeah, he's not conservative. He's an anomaly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, maybe he does what he needs to do in our province tends to be very liberal, so he's doing what he needs to do, which is
Yeah.
which is common in politics.
Yep. Yep.
I don't agree with it, and for me, from my mind, this is the difference between politics and leadership.
Yeah.
And politics is kind of like, when you're just saying what you need to say to keep everyone happy and keep popular. I realize right now that I'm saying things that are going to make me unpopular for a lot of people. Well, I value the truth over what's popular and what gets the
Yeah.
approval from other people. I'm kind of done with, approval seeking. I've had enough of it. So that's where I am. But my point is that that's a key indicator right there. When you're ejected from your party because you disagree on this one thing. And she had a very solid point. Like, they didn't need the extended heavy-handed mandate powers. They didn't need them. They wanted them, and she spoke out about it, and they ejected her. That's
Yeah.
not how a conservative party would work. You're supposed to disagree, but then at the end of the day, you all got to get in the same room together and respect each other. You don't kick each other out.
But I remember that it's on record that they did fight. Jim and Belinda did fight against the COVID mandates, and it's on record. It's where they stand, and they're pretty much aligned with everyone else except the people in the cars wearing masks to this day. I mean,
And this is
they're just lost in this fear. And I think that should be a crime. To create this fear, this perpetual fear, is really it's like a social engineering, but it's cruelty. It hurts me to see people scared like that. When sure, there's lots of things in the air we don't really want to breathe, but I mean, there's really nothing we can do about it. I mean, our bodies were created perfectly, and made to deal with these sort of things.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, hey, if people want to, drive in their car with the mask on, I totally respect that, and I'll fight for the right to do that all day long. I don't want people telling me how to, take care of my body. I know how it works. I've been living with it for over 40 years. I know how well it works, and I know what it does. I don't want someone else telling me how to use it and how to take care of it, right? Unless I'm asking for help, right? I don't want it dictated to me, and I'm not going to dictate to other people how they should be, living their life.
And I think we're kind of on the same page that way, where I do respect a person's right to wear a mask in their car, like you. I just think it's criminal that a government would create fear out of thin air.
Oh yeah,
and cause this to happen. Irresponsible.
I agree with that, and it did, and the initial fear did make people a lot easier to persuade, and that was admitted. I mean, we've heard, people in politics say that, like, well, we needed to drive up the fear to get compliance, right? Well, really, I personally, I would have liked truth to get compliance, but maybe that's just me. Yeah.
Transparency. Yes. One thing that you will get respect and you will keep your mandate is transparency.
And
If
that
you
was
show the evidence, you will keep
one
your
of the
constituents.
this was one of the big issues that I had with Doug Ford, is that they did promise transparency, and
Yeah.
then there wasn't the transparency, we wanted, we were hoping for, we expected. And we were hoping that these, the professionals were making the best decisions for us. And then I don't know if you remember, I'll never forget the moment that who was our health minister at the time, Dr. Yaffe. She was one of our health ministers, and she got caught on a mic saying, before a press release, she was saying, well, I never know. I just read what they tell me to read.
Yeah, I remember that.
What?
Yeah. I just read what they tell me to write. Yeah.
Who's driving the bus?
Yeah.
So that was a little bit scary. So that's fine. Okay, fine. So she's reading. Well, okay. Well, who's writing that? Where's the transparency? I'm
Yeah.
all on board to follow along if you can present the evidence. This is what we're doing, and not just driving with fear, but drive with truth. And that's what they promised. They didn't deliver on it. And that's why the New Blue is also looking to do an investigation into how that was handled as well, because people suffered for it. Kids suffered for it, needlessly. They suffered for it, and they're still suffering for it.
Yes.
And that's also a part of my policy as well that I want to push, and I'll be very loud about, is helping kids regain their resilience. Because the one thing I see, a lot of issues kids are having, is all the result of what I call the resilience deficit. And anyone that I talk to, whether they're a coach, or whether they're teaching martial arts or teaching dance or whatever, they all say the same thing, that the kids aren't the same as they were before the pandemic, right? They're they're screen glued, or they just have so much more anxiety. They're just not as resilient. And the way we build that, we have to bring that back. And I know it's not an easy fix. Like, everyone love to just take a magic pill and then just fix our kids. We can't do that. It's not that simple. It needs to be, the cause of it needs to be addressed. And the cause of a lot of these issues is a lack of resilience, and we can build that up. We build that up through through different sports and activities, through hockey, soccer, baseball, through dance, through gymnastics, through music, through martial arts. We build resilience in all of these things, right? And one thing that I'm going to fight for is bringing back the childhood fitness tax credit. I think that's a common sense solution that isn't going to cost the government anything. All it's going to have, they're just going to have to let go of a little bit of tax dollars. That's it, right? You make the childhood fitness tax credit, not what it was before federally, but provincially. You make it $2,000, and you lead the way for the other provinces to take this seriously. Okay, $2,000 a child. You get these kids moving again. You get them moving. You get their confidence up. You get their mental focus and mental health up. Because you can't. Once they're more active physically, the mind always follows. We say the mind follows the body, and the body follows the mind. So once you get them moving, the resilience starts building, and they're not going to have all these, these chronic illness issues that we have when they're moving and they're exercising more. A lot of that stuff is going to be less of an issue, but you're dealing with it proactively. And you're dealing with it with a way where you don't have to throw money at it, right? You don't have to throw more government at it. You don't have to throw more money at it. You just have to throw less. Say, okay, keep $2,000 a year in your tax, save it. Don't pay your tax. Use it for your, for your childhood's fitness. Do that. Why don't they do that?
Mm-hmm.
But the concept of less government and less money is, very hard cheese to swallow for some people in government. And I'd like that to change, to look for common sense solutions that aren't always, just throw money at the problem. You can't just keep throwing money at a broken system, right? You have to fix the leaks.
And the important thing is that you put thought into it. You're not just grabbing words on a page.
Yeah, no. I like I said, it's very easy to say, well, we need affordable housing, we need to fix mental health. Like, well, what does that what does that mean, and how do we do that, right? So I find a
Mhm.
lot of a lot of our legacy politicians, they're great people, they're well intentioned, but I don't think they have the hands-on experience in these two industries specifically to make an
Mhm.
impactful change. The
Yep.
housing being one of them, because it's a complex issue, and the mental
Yep.
health issue being another one as well. I don't
Yep.
think you're going to be able to, you know, to drug our kids out of this mental health crisis. I don't think, any amount of giving them, just medication is going to fix it. You have to address the underlying cause, and that's what I would like to work on. And if this goes through and we get to affect change in these policies, that'll be great. If not, that's fine. I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing anyway. I'm going to keep doing this stuff on a local level, right? Working with kids and building housing. So I'm fine with that, and I'm happy if these ideas get pushed out and someone takes notice, especially the childhood fitness tax credit. Like, for my mind, it's such a common sense, simple thing. I would
Yep.
hope people look at it and be like, "Hey, why haven't we done this? This is a pretty simple, simple thing." I mean, it's not going to magically, like wave a wand, everything's going to be fixed, but it is a solution that's going to contribute, right? Um,
One thing I find really confusing is the non-status party of the Kathleen Wynne sorry not sorry Crombie. Uh, they're all the same to me. The Liberals, they've just become like very, very bad. But their commercials are everywhere right now. Where are they getting the money? They got no funding, no party status, and
I
she's got commercials going everywhere. It's like
Yeah.
all she cares about is the conservatives. So
Hmm.
that's all that they think is a threat, because they've got Dominion voting machines, so they're not scared of you, right? So
Yeah.
really about overwhelming numbers. So your constituents. I mean, this podcast is really for everyone, but in Ontario, but especially St. Catharines. The
Hmm.
people of St. Catharines, they need to know who their candidates are and what they stand for. They need to hear them talking, not just reading a script. And that's what we're not doing, right? No script. You didn't know any questions I was going to ask, and you're just speaking from the heart. And you're not going to call everybody friends, because that's phony right from the start, right? It's just fake.
I think since I started, I think I'm down a few friends since I started running this campaign.
Yeah,
So,
to all my former friends, friends
but
and former friends.
yeah, but I'm whatever. I'm sleeping well at night, and I
Yeah,
can look at myself in the mirror, and there was a lot of times when during the pandemic, when I bit my tongue. And I'm not
yeah,
really I'm kind of just it's exhausting to a point when you see all the stuff that's happening as a result of these bad policies that are put in place.
yeah.
um yeah, and I'd
You have
really like
18
to
days, right? Is it
sorry.
18 days? 18 days to the 27th?
Yep, that's it. That'll
So
be it.
there's not a lot of time. This is why I'm going to be. I've got another new blue candidate coming Tuesday, Gary Demelick, who's from my region, my area.
Hmm.
So I'm going to try to cover as many regions as I can with different candidates, so people can. I mean, it's the same policy, but they just need to know where the website is. They can look it up. And I really encourage you to look up all 26 if you have the time. Just look at what they have to say. And I'll save you time. I wouldn't read the Communist Party of Canada. Just avoid that one. You don't need to waste any time on that one. We pretty much have that already, where all the
we've
parties are working together.
Yeah.
But I mean, Kathleen Wynne did bring us the smart meters just to raise our exposure to radiation, which is really great.
Is that right? I didn't see. I wasn't paying attention very much back then.
Yeah, smart meters.
Yeah.
I've seen tests done on them. So they lied about the pulses and how frequent. And the windmills are really terrible. They're causing farmers to be sick. They can't sleep. Some of them have to move further away, like just live somewhere else. But yeah, the windmills are absolutely
Well,
horrible.
and this is the issue too. Like, so we're building, the development we're doing is they're greener buildings. They are more efficient, which is like, here's the thing, okay? If you're going to make a building more efficient and the market likes it, that's great.
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
who doesn't want a cleaner building? But pushing this stuff and mandating this stuff and then virtue signaling this stuff,
Yep.
that's what I have
It's
a
no good.
problem with.
I
And
agree.
and the windmills are they're kind of like they're big. You can see them. It's almost like a giant virtue signaling rather than
Yeah,
just
it
doing
is.
the stuff that works, right?
It is because it takes more energy to make one than it actually creates.
It's
So
yeah,
it is virtual signaling.
it's kind of typical government where trying to
Yep.
be 50% efficient at fixing the 100% of the problems that it costs. But there are
Would you look at,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you first.
But there's practical ways to, if you want to cut down on emissions. Again, like I don't want to like restrict anyone's freedom to do that. But okay, if you want to have a building that's more efficient, great. If you want to, if you want to drive an EV, that's fantastic. But let the market work itself out. If you want to have greener cities, good planning will get you there. But using the heavy hand of government enforcing this stuff is not the solution. So people are asking me about this a lot, about the about the environment, right? I don't like to use the word climate change, but I do want to clean up the environment, and I want to make less pollution. Who doesn't want that, right? It's
Mhm.
even if we're wrong about it, we've got things cleaner. That's great, but just don't force it on people, right? That's my point of view on that. Sorry, didn't
Well,
really go too much into that.
by default, Rob, I admire your courage because St. Catharines is very left-leaning, woke city council. They're like wide awake woke, and it's scary because I have friends that live in St. Catharines, and some have like left the country.
Hmm.
They've just been demoralized, and so you do have a challenge. So I respect you for that. For because they attack. They're not nice. They're looking for any flaw that
Oh yeah,
two
no,
words, and they'll repeat it.
I
In,
believe
in,
it, and I'm sure this is gonna get this is great candid conversation, and it's gonna get torn apart. But that's
it
just
could,
that's just fine.
but
But
I
I
try
didn't.
to make. I try to give them nothing to work with. I just typical two guys talking about something without giving them ammunition and talking the truth at the same time. That's the whole thing about the truth table is we're just being honest. We're giving the truth on where we stand on different things, different topics. And it does take courage to run. I know because I ran as a libertarian and I saw infiltration through that party, even,
Wow.
you know.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's everywhere. And the
I didn't.
liberals and the conservatives will use their money to get people to look at you and look at every video and everything you posted on Twitter and just look for anything they can use if you're any bit of a threat to them, which is why we're doing a last minute right now, because it's right before the election. They don't have time and they're not thinking about you and they don't see you as a threat right now, but you really are, because
Mhm.
you're a threat to their power and their abuse of power. And if God's with us, we're going to get a whole bunch of seats and maybe even a mandate and take our province back. That's what I hope.
I hope so too. I mean, I didn't jump into this, hell, because it's the fight I thought I was going to win. I jumped in because it's a fight that just needs to be fought, right? Like
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
needs to do it, and I keep hearing from people that they have opinions like this, and they're afraid to say it, and they don't even understand why. Like why am I afraid to say this? I'm not saying, I'm not like restricting anyone's right. I'm not calling anyone any names or anything. Why am I afraid to say it? It's yeah, it's a funny issue. But when you speak the truth, you don't really have to worry about it. It's like the line says, if the truth if the truth is going to kill them, well, let them die. Sorry if that's a little bit too morbid.
No, but, well, yeah. It's true. But if anybody wants to learn more, there's lots of videos on the website as well. So there's lots of information from the leader and the co-founder, Belinda, with lots of their information, how to join, subscribe to their newsletter, and find out who your candidate is, your candidate, and also shows all their principles, labor, immigration, training, and skills. So, and of course, like I said before, I would recommend you do this with any party that you consider. There's so many to choose from, but really, there's only a few that actually would reverse what's happening to Ontario right now. And this is one of them right here today that has the potential to turn St. Catharines back to where it used to be, where people didn't lock their houses.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was a kid, we didn't lock our doors. I was a kid, there was no locks.
Yeah.
The cars, no one locked the car. We can go back to that, but we need people like you who have common sense way of looking at things, and the ambition to reverse and implement. Like Belinda. I mean, she was brave. She went against the whole party. And that's why New Blue is here. So New Blue is an opportunity for Ontario to get out of this left-right paradigm, because it's a trap. They're playing mind games. The polls aren't even honest. They're excluding parties. I'm losing my voice. It's terrible. The host that lost his voice, I'm gonna have to do sign language eventually. but I lose my voice totally.
Just type it in, yeah. But no, this has been great. I really appreciate it, Paul, coming on and let me kind of speak openly and freely, and not the most polished interview I've given, but definitely I think one of the funnest. I would encourage anyone. I'm pretty, I'm a pretty open book. If you guys find me on Facebook, if you see I've been engaging with people like crazy back and forth and having, our conversations that turn into arguments, but I'm trying to be objective about it and explain my positions, not in a way that's insulting anyone. I'm trying to be as patient as I can. So if you guys want to engage with me at all, ask any questions. I would just ask that you please don't call anyone. There's no name calling towards me, towards you, towards anyone else, and you can engage in the conversation. We would love to have all the opinions there, so we could all talk, and we can hopefully explain some of these issues. But like I was saying before, as soon as you label someone, you're just you're throwing that bias in. It's locked in, and you're not going to hear anything they have to say. So it doesn't help when you throw that label on someone and then you're not able to think objectively anymore. So just try to watch out for that if you can, so we can have some some engaging conversations if you'd like.
Well, thank you, Rob, for coming on. I appreciate you representing New Blue in Ontario, and I wish you luck in the election. I hope I can invite you back, because perhaps I'm thinking of having a roundtable like I did with Maxine, and where I could get multiple members. I've invited Jim as well. So we'll see if we can arrange a roundtable. I would like you to join if that's possible.
Absolutely, that'd be great. I would love to be there.
And thank you all at home for joining us. And we're back Tuesday with another New Blue member, and possibly tomorrow too. You never know. I'm opening my every day now until the election for anyone running in the provincial election, so people can hear what they have to say, know who they're voting for in their district. And I'm going to end off this with an interview with a good friend, David Menzies from Rebel News, who interviewed both Jim and Belinda. And again, thank you, Rob. Any final words before we go?
Just please make sure you check out the policy platform so you understand what we're all about. And of course, don't forget to vote on February 27th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Parliament Hill. It's Jim Carahalios, the leader of the New Blue Party of Ontario, and of course, Belinda Carahalios. Hey guys, what brings you out here? I thought, like I said in the preamble, this is like a political third rail to show your face at a pro-life rally.
Well, that's what many say, Dave, and those are the excuses. You know, working from the inside, the culture's against us. But it's important that when you get into politics, Dave, you lead by your values and convictions. We've always been clear, even from the inside of the Conservative Party of Canada, we work to amend that constitution to make it more democratic for conservative voices to come forward, those voices who believe that life starts at conception and ends at natural death. We've been punished in politics with retribution for holding those views. The mainstream media has often excused the retribution leveled against us, as saying, well, they're too conservative. And now we've got a New Blue Party of Ontario, and we are proud to say in our mission statement that life starts at conception and ends at natural death. And we are open to those to run for our party who believe in those views. And we have 124 candidates for this election. And the best candidate is Belinda Carahalios up for re-election, who fought a couple of years ago to stop a bubble zone from getting put in place by the Ford PCs in Kitchener, Dave.
And you know, Belinda, to build on what Jim just said, what I see back in vogue all of a sudden with the counter demonstrators here in terms of the abortion issue is my body, my choice. That seemed to go into hibernation the past 2 years when people were being forced to take an experimental vaccine for COVID. And if it didn't accept that so-called choice, you were economically disciplined. In other words, you were fired without benefits. How do you make sense of this?
Well, I don't think you can make sense of it, can you? I know you and I have spoken about that before, how it's my body, my choice when it comes to things like killing an unborn child, but it's your body, my choice if it's taking a vaccine or putting a mask on your face. So it's a little ironic to see them here waving these signs saying my body, my choice, because at the end of the day, it's not your body.
And Jim, the Conservative debate, the second one, aired last night. We found out that only one of the six, namely Dr. Leslyn Lewis, is unabashedly pro-life. Do you think running as a federal Conservative, it's a prudent strategy to be pro-choice or pro-life?
It's important for a politician to stand up for what they believe in, Dave. Yeah. And it's too bad in 2020, when Aaron O'Toole and team kicked me out of the leadership race, it's too bad that Derek Sloan focuses attacks on Leslyn Lewis. She's not perfect, Dave, but she would have won if Derek Sloan threw his support behind Leslyn Lewis.
Oh, do you think so?
Oh, well, she only got 80% of Derek's down ballot vote. And she just fell short on that second ballot of beating Aaron O'Toole. If Derek Sloan had given an endorsement to Leslyn Lewis instead of firing on her, she would have beat Aaron O'Toole. And she's not perfect. Certainly she has views on Paris Accord and green energy that I don't agree with, but she certainly would have been better than Aaron O'Toole. So good for Leslyn for standing up. I hope that she backs up what she says in her voting record in the legislature and parliament, the way Belinda has on the provincial level with her voting record on these important issues, whether it's pro-life issue, critical race theory, and so on.
You know, and Belinda, speaking of what Jim just referred to, not coming as advertised potentially, I think that's a fair criticism to make of Premier Doug Ford, your former boss. I want to get your insight because you were kicked out of caucus. Last week, we went to the kickoff of the election, Ford Nation. I've been going to these events for 15 years, even to the private residence of the Fords. And we were told, as was Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun, somebody who I think has given the most fair coverage to the Ford family in 2 decades, we were told to get out of the building or face arrest. What's going on?
You know, I think we've woken up, right? 2018, we thought we were going to get this conservative with Doug Ford. And that's one of the reasons why I ran with him, right? Because I thought that, hey, he's talking about transparency and accountability and free votes and all the things, axing the carbon tax, which he didn't do. And I found out really early when I was with the PC party that he was not conservative. And after I got kicked out because they tabled that dreadful anti-democratic bill, the Reopening Ontario Act, which is essentially the lockdown bill, and it just got worse. And it's unfortunate that they're not letting you in, because I remember that at one point that Doug Ford was saying that they would come into the Rebel studio and do interviews. And it's one of many promises that have been broken to not only you, but to Ontarians everywhere.
Thank you, David Menzies. Thank you, Rebel News, for the footage. Tuesday, I've got February 11th, I got Gary Dumalek, Niagara Falls representative for New Blue. And Wednesday, the 12th, I've got the Mama Bears. And it's an alternative schooling and resources to help parents make informed decisions for their children. It's mamabearsproject.com. And then Wednesday, that's Wednesday. And then Sunday, I've got Salgove back on. And on the 19th, I'm a guest on The Missing Link. Now, this schedule could change because I've opened every day for any candidates running in the provincial election. So anything could happen. Thank you for joining us. Please share this with anyone who lives in St. Catharines, because Rob is a St. Catharines candidate, so they can have an opportunity to hear what he has to say. Thank you, and we'll see you again at the Truth Table. I'm Paul Everton. It's been a pleasure.